presence as Elvis. I don't think anyone's had as strong a presence.
No, you know, one of the things that's fascinating about Elvis is how he became consumed by fame and how fame destroyed him. That's one of the things that's fascinating. I mean, I have the regular fan thing too, where, you know, I like the Jailhouse Rock number. But what's fascinating about him as I've become older, you know, and it's gotten past, you know, oh, he's cool, Elvis. It's like, wow, everything, you know, and how the people around him just let him destroy himself, and how he was still famous. And then after he's dead, then you hear all of this stuff, you know. It's like, wow, all that was going on when we was thinking he was super cool Elvis, you know. So it's just Elvis is fascinating just because it's like, this is what fame can do to you, you know?
It was mainly parents, and they were against rock and roll, you know. Anyway, before the Beatles came along, I mean, people have been trying to stamp out rock and roll since it started. Because it came from black music, and the words had a lot of double entendre in the early days. And it was sort of, you know, the white kids, our white, nice wasps are gonna go crazy with all this moving their bodies. You know, and the music got to your body, and the Beatles just carried it a bit further, made it a little more white even than Elvis did.
So out of this band came the banjo player, Lonnie Donegan, and he was into, it was really bluegrass and what is like Hank Williams or country blues type of thing. And so he started this thing which was they call skiffle, because you know Lonnie Donegan had a #1 hit in America with Rock Island Line.
I mean, it was bad enough him coming out of the army and doing Are You Lonesome Tonight, you know. I wanted him to stay wild, to give me all those edges, that kind of, that howl that he had. But, you know, he was just amazing and spectacular, and it was just that he really opened the door to my whole love of music. Maybe Alan Freed was trying to do with Chuck and Bo and all that sort of stuff, but he was a great looking guy, and he actually, that physical representation, by the time he got to England, guys would like hit themselves on the head, bang, what's going on? Who's this human being?
So I heard this sort of treat me like a fool, treat me mean and cruel. The sound of that voice was heavenly, and I hadn't got any hairs on my chest or anything like that. There was something going on in my body. I was moving through the spheres. I was falling in love with my teacher at school. Everything was going on, and Elvis was the soundtrack to that. And on and on and on and on.
My company that I worked for at the time would always contract Mr. Phillips to let us in anytime that we had something to record, and usually Elvis would be there practicing a lot of times. He had several people, but at that time he was a handsome guy, good looking. I didn't think too much about his playing or singing. I mean, he was okay, but I didn't see at that time what I saw later on.
When he started, I think he really had serious aspirations about becoming a serious actor, and they just wouldn't let him out of the box because they had a jeweler. They had the golden egg. You know, they knew they could count on him where he was, and so they left him there, and he couldn't get out of the box. And I think that had a lot to do with what happened to him later. He was unfulfilled, despite the fact that he was worshipped worldwide as the king of rock and roll. I mean, he'd pack him in. He's still packing him in. He's been gone how many years? But his own personal development, his own spiritual development was hampered because he made it so fast, so big. There wasn't anything that he had to model on. I mean, nobody had ever been there before. I mean, he was getting sunburned from his climb.
Brown versus Board of Education ruled segregation illegal in schools, allowing black kids to attend white schools, which included busing between black and white neighborhoods, and it became the first step taken towards ending segregation. Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white passenger in Montgomery, Alabama. In 1955, while Little Richard started to rise to fame, transforming the way white and black folk shared public spaces while combating racial stereotypes. show by show. Elvis Presley's first hit metaphorically cut the ribbon for rock and roll to become a lifestyle and genre white folk would embrace and which they could openly identify with. African American music, which had previously been derogated as race music, was now made available to a wider white audience, which changed its sound into a more sterile version of itself. With the new music style, a new name was needed: rockin' and rollin', allegedly an early 20th century black slang term for sexual intercourse. This was the title of the rebellious, fast-paced, exciting new genre and lifestyle. 50s rock and roll loosened the dehumanizing ideology set by the Jim Crow laws and prepared culturally what the civil rights movement would achieve in the next decade. In the same year of 1954, the separate but equal policy which had ruled since 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson, was raised with the United States Supreme Court's Brown versus Board of Education, ruling all the while a young white American man by the name of Elvis Presley was recording his first hit, That's Alright Mama, with rock and roll's most avant-garde producer Sam Phillips at Sun Records in Memphis, Tennessee.
Elvis came out with a style of his own, and it was very creative. And once he got into it and he got that feel, Elvis just took off like a late freight. And with Elvis doing this kind of music, gave an injection to black music that no other artist had ever done.
Sam Phillips' philosophy remained sincerely unaffected by the cancerous segregation of his time. As a result, he produced rhythm and blues luminaries such as B.B. King, Rufus Thomas, and Ike Turner. Sam Phillips released what some declare to be the first rock and roll single, Rocket 88, by the Ike Turner fronted band Jackie Brenston and his Delta Cats. Sam Phillips, over the time, his earnings were tenacious, and he soon realized that he would do better in the era of segregation if he could market black rock and roll to a white audience by proxy of white artists. As a businessman, Sam Phillips, I would say, was cunning, because previously many white teens would listen to rhythm and blues and often did so in secret in heavily segregated America. But Elvis brought rock and roll to the white world and presented an icon white teens would identify with. This blueprint will later become the trend. And step by step, African American influence receded into the background in the mainstream's perception of rock music.
I don't think there's any way you can tell the Elvis Presley story without telling about his relationship to the black community, to black culture and music. It's just not possible. And also, you got to think, like, there's no drama, because the fact that he was friends with B.B. King, the fact that he was at a time living in one of the White Houses in a black environment. There's a story in there of the little boy, and they go into the gospel tent and the preacher grabs him. That was told me by Sam Bell, who I found when he passed last year. That story is totally true. Leave him be, he's with the Spirit. And that connection to gospel for the rest of his life, Sister Rosetta, all those influences, and more than influences too, I think, just a deep, abiding connection and respect and love. I mean, there's real love there. And that's got all missed a bit in the wash. And I'm not here to defend one way or the other. People should have their dialogue and their debate. But all I am as the ultimate outsider is to tell the story. And you can't tell the story of Elvis without telling the story of Black America as well.
So there you go. The Purveyor of a Purpose, Part 2, with Elvis Presley. Now, you make up your own mind. Was this cultural appropriation? Or was it cultural appreciation? What do you think? Thank you for watching. And thank you for listening. Stay tuned, and I'll catch you on the next one.